Hello, podcast listeners. This is Ed Franklin with the Ed Franklin No Limits podcast and the first episode of Raising 10. I know you were used to raising 8, but I thought I'd get it right this time and do the Raising 10 since I peppered in 2 grandchildren there. And to kick off this season, I have this awesome guest, and we're going to add a little levity to raising kids because a lot of times I get on the all the hard parts of raising kids, but my guest Danielle Frank has twisted the system a little bit and made it a lot more fun. And she's written a book called A Wine Lover's Guide to Parenting. And I read this book, and I got to be honest with you, Danielle, when you sent it over to me, I'm like, oh man, I don't know if I have time to read this book. Right? It's 11 chapters. I don't. And then I started reading it, and it's first of all, it's incredibly clever. It's
Thank
hilarious,
you.
and it gets kind of down to the fun part and the looking back part of raising kids and going, yeah, that was not funny when it happened, but it's funny now. So welcome to my podcast. Um,
Thank you
maybe,
for having me.
yeah, maybe starting off, where did this, so you wrote this book 11 years ago. We had a discussion last week, right?
Correct.
Where did
Yeah.
this idea come from? We'll start with that, and you can give us a little bit of your background too.
Sure, sure. So I've worked in the wine and spirits industry for over 22 years. And I've always wanted to be a mom. I always love kids. I'm great with kids. I was engaged to be married, and my ex-fiance has kids from a prior marriage and sort of went back and forth about wanting more kids. Said he would, and we got engaged. And ultimately, I realized he really didn't want more kids, and I did.
Okay.
So, it really that dream of becoming a mom sadly didn't happen for me. But not having kids didn't mean the end of nurturing, right? It's just it took a different form for me. I'm a mentor. I'm really involved in my niece and nephew's lives.
Good.
And I'm really involved in so many of my friends' kids' lives. They all call me. My niece couldn't say Danielle when she was younger, so it turned into Dee Dee. So I'm Aunt Dee Dee to many, many kids out there. There's probably like 12 kids that call me Aunt Dee Dee, even though I only have one legitimate niece and nephew. So from there, I was watching my niece and nephew one day when they were younger, and great kids. But of course, some kids whine sometimes.
Oh, yeah.
And I was watching them and they were whining about something, and I said, Aunt Dee Dee drinks wine. She doesn't listen to wine. And
Right.
so that kind of that whole, the evolution and like you say, no limits and life not going as planned, it sort of redefined that nurturing motherhood for me is turning that into a creative outlet, wanting to create something
Sure.
as an homage to all these parents I see and the great parenting that I see them doing on raising kids well, coupled with my knowledge of wine and not only working in the business, but as a wine lover,
Sure.
seeing the parallels and the fun in it, having a little levity and the fun in how to raise kids well to wine terminology, and then ultimately also making it approachable, right? As you said, first it's like daunting, like it seems like when somebody's like, before they even see my book too, it's like, oh, do I have time to read a book? It's a quick read. It's 11 chapters written in the style of an illustrated children's book. It rhymes. So it's a quick read and it's really fun and hopefully makes you laugh and you learn about wine along the way.
Well, and the first thing I thought about was Dr. Seuss, right? With an edge. Dr. Seuss with an edge.
I
And
love that. I might plagiarize that and use
yeah,
it.
go for it. I'll tell you one quick story with the kids, and there was a million of these, but one day we were getting ready to go somewhere, and I told this on my podcast, and my son had got up and went to the restroom, and we were eating a bag of chips or a couple bags of chips before we went out, just so they all had something in their stomach. And he was taking kind of a long time, and I went to get up, and he walked out, and I said, "Hey, dude, why were you in the restroom so long?" He goes, "Well, the toilet got clogged up," and I'm like, "Oh my God, let me go fix it before we leave." And he goes, "No, no, no, Dad, I fixed it." I said, "What do you mean you fixed it?" He says, "I just reached my hand in there and cleared it out, and then flushed it, and it worked." And as he was saying that, he was putting his hand in the bag of chips, and we all went, "Those are your chips now.
Yeah,
Don't
yeah.
We don't want any of those chips." And these are those funny things that happen, and there's a million of those stories when the kids were growing up. But when I was reading your book. There was so many little things last weekend because we had talked last week. I was at church, and in any church, it's very hard surfaces, so everything echoes in there. And there was more than usual amount of babies and kids, and it sounded like when you're at the zoo, and and you hear these monkey sounds and bird sounds and things like that, and it was like that. And I was thinking about your book, and man, I just love the way it reads. It's so easy to read. I could see this being a great coffee table book for anybody who drinks wine, mothers or fathers. And what a great Christmas gift this would be. So we'll kind of press it on that too, because we want to sell some copies.
Thank you. I
So
appreciate that. Yeah, I tell people all the time, like this, it's yes, of course, it's great for parents, particularly great baby shower gift and a
yeah,
hardcover book, but it's also great for, aunts, uncles, wine lovers, people that love a good humor book, or, anybody that wants to learn about wine. And yeah, it's a fun read. And like I said, it's um, always looking at new ways to make things approachable and fun and make people
sure.
laugh about the real things in life.
No, it's awesome, and like I said, I read it, and then I read it. I kind of read it a couple times, and I'm like, oh my God, this is so funny. And I
Thank
should
you.
have the book pulled up so I can read some of the things out of it. But um,
I can read a quick blurb if you want.
read a couple of quick blurbs.
Am I am
That'd be
I
amazing.
am I allowed to, well, and I could do this one without cursing.
You can no, I curse all the time, and I usually warn my guests that I'm going to say something. And it's funny because I've said curse words in mixed company before, and mothers or fathers will say, we don't use those kind of words around our house. And I said, well, you're at my house now, and we use them all the time, like they're. So I apologize if it offends you, but I got news for you. Your kids heard it already at school, and they're in second grade. So
Yeah, absolutely. Well, this one I can do without using the whole word. So this chapter, lesson 3, is about you don't want your kids to ferment, right? It's
yes,
all about, fermenting is turning sugar into alcohol, so harsh. And again, it gives the definition every time I use a wine terminology, it gives the definition. So this is about somebody that is not rude. So some lines from this book is there's nothing worse than a child who has behavior that is crude because it'll continue as they're older and become someone who's rude. People don't take kindly to and aren't nice to those with attitude because it's very off-putting and puts others in a bad mood, oftentimes causing confrontation and leads to a nasty food. Wanting to put a little bit of poison in your child's food. Is that really how you want your kid to be viewed? Wouldn't you prefer that there's someone who's wooed? Without manners, they'll ferment and turn into someone harsh and biting. They may turn into a kid who's rude, obnoxious, and always fighting. So teach your kids some manners and have some heart and soul. Without that, your kid may well turn into an a-hole. See, I did it without the actual cursing.
you did perfect, and that's how the whole book reads for you, guests or listeners. Let me tell you, you got to get this book for a friend or whatever for yourself, and read this book because it's really fabulous.
Oh, thank you.
Raising kids is overrated sometimes. You said you don't have children, and yes, there's those real high points in your life, but sometimes I'm not a wine drinker. I'm a vodka drinker or whiskey. And I would pour a drink and tell my wife, yeah, I'm glad I had 8 kids. This was smart thinking, especially the 7 daughters. And we had some alcohol incidents in high school with some kids that now looking back were super funny. No one got hurt, but it was like, oh my God. And listen, I look at people's kids all the time, especially now, and I can Monday morning quarterback because I've done this for 39 years now,
I'm sure.
and say to myself, you better get that kid under control now because I'm telling you, it's going to get 10 times worse when they're 12 years old, 13 years old. And we had a household of we didn't get talked back to a lot. I'm a big man, so that was part of it. It was like no one was going to yell back at me or whatever. And we didn't use physical, punishment with our kids, but they got the point. I had the look. I had my dad's look. I could look at the kids and make them cry. So we didn't have too many discipline problems. But I got to tell you, we addressed it if it did happen. We said, no, we don't talk to each other like that, first of all, and you don't never talk to like somebody like that. But we expected the same thing from teachers too. We didn't want teachers talking back to our kids. And there were times when I had to go to a teacher and say, I don't think that was appropriate, and I don't want to ever hear that again because it's not right.
Yeah, and that's the idea, right? Like doing this when they're young, when they're impressionable, and
Yeah,
when they're learning. And I love what you said about, talking to their teachers as well, is because unfortunately we know like some parents are not engaged with what's going on outside the house. And they need to know what's going on, within the school.
right.
Not only how your kid is treating other kids, and that's a chapter in there about not bullying. I mean, that's a huge area of concern, these days. But
Sure.
how they're being treated by others, and not only just kids, but by the teacher as well. So it's really
And you
poignant, really important.
and your book gets to the point quick on a lot of those little things that people think are funny, especially if they haven't had kids yet, but they're not
Yeah,
funny. The bowling thing was always a concern with us. And I spent a lot of time at the school I used to read in classes, and I started a dad's club years ago at the school that's still going now. And
oh
the whole
great.
point was to get fathers in the school because moms usually got credit for everything and they were on the PTA and there was always a couple guys, but I really got a lot of dads to start paying attention to what was going on. And I had a podcast recently about education and how we kind of parents tend to send their kids off at 8 in the morning and not worry about it until 3. And they don't know what's going on in between with the bullying, with the, having a hard time learning, all these things. Or you always have that kid in class that's over acting up and it's taking away time from the other kids that aren't acting up.
Right.
We were in this just came up the other day with my wife and I. I was in a meeting for sexual harassment, right? They put the managers through these meetings. And we had a guy, and there's always this guy in a meeting, and you know who I'm talking about when you hear this. When he says, well, what if the woman has a low cut top on? And we're saying, okay, you still can't say anything.
Right.
Well, what if she's joking around? I'm warning you, don't say anything. Let it go, right? There's always that person that asks questions, and those kind of kids that behave shitty when they're younger, that's who they end up being in that
Right.
meeting.
Exactly.
Right, the ones that are
Exactly.
annoying everybody and kind of dragging things on. We're trying to go home, and this guy's asking stupid questions like that.
Yeah, that's
It's just
exactly it. It's you want to get to your kids when they're young, when they're most impressionable,
sure.
raise them to be the best version that they can be for sure.
And I got news for you. Not physically having children, you have your thumb on their pulse, right? You know what's up. You've been around enough kids, and you've been around employees, probably younger employees that probably could have used this book, or their parents could have used it at least when they're because you just see how people behave these days, and we don't want our kids behaving like that.
Yeah, and
So
I always
it's
say, I mean, it doesn't take a parent to know good behavior from bad behavior, that's for sure. And I see it certainly in the wild a lot. I was telling somebody this story yesterday. Like I had a business meeting it was at a luxury hotel. I work with all of the national hotel groups in my wine and spirits job, and I was at one of their luxury hotel properties having a meeting at the restaurant where we're having breakfast. And there was this family with like their kids were running rampant up and
yeah,
down the banquettes where we're sitting, and the parents are just sitting there eating. The kids are screaming. I was like, first of all, when I was younger, I mean, my parents didn't show violence, but my dad always did the pretend to get the belt thing. I mean,
yeah,
I was like, okay, sorry. Yeah, like first of all, I never would have thought to like run up and down a banquet in like a public restaurant, but yeah, they just didn't do anything at all. So yeah, it doesn't take a parent or a genius to see good from bad behavior, that's for sure.
yeah. And we don't go out much, but I don't know what it was. Maybe a month ago, we went out. My wife had a gift certificate, and we went out. And same thing, kids running, standing on the furniture in a restaurant, and that. And I was one of those people. I used to clean up after my kids. Like if they dropped a bunch of like when they were babies, and I would try to get many as the crumbs I could up and put away because I was kind of embarrassed that we left a mess. And usually the staff didn't, they understood, but I was also a little bit embarrassed. And I'll tell you, if we did that shit, my dad would have popped us if we did that when we were kids in a restaurant. No doubt
But
about it.
yeah, to your point, it just made me think about when you said about, when you try and clean up after your kids, even though the restaurant employees would do that. And it makes me think about when I travel a lot for work, and when I'm at the airport, hopefully you can't hear that a plane is flying overhead as
No,
I
you're
said
good. I
that.
can't hear it.
Um, I was at the airport every time I'm going through security and like everybody takes their stuff out of the bins. it drives me crazy. I don't know why, but when they don't put their bins away, and I'm always
Oh, you're
cleaning
like me.
everybody's bins, and I always think about that. I'm like, my parents taught me to clean up after myself, even if it's just the bin at the, it's not the TSA's agent responsibility. So I knew as a kid to always clean up after yourself, and that applies as an adult.
Absolutely. And we were hard on our kids about that too. And listen, we were at the gym yesterday. I was picking up some paper towels that I didn't put on the ground, but they were there, right? And I was near them, so I'm like, drives me crazy. So I would do the same thing. You're
Yeah.
a lot like my wife and I, and our kids. We would make sure they learned those lessons too. So, what's your favorite chapter out of your book? Do you have one?
I think my favorite one is um the not like is your kid a mulled wine? And the reason why I say that is because it's the more serious one. A mulled wine is one that's heated, served as a punch. It's spiced, and this one is about bullying because this one just it breaks my heart. What is going on in the world today? I think obviously one we're more exposed to it in social media of hearing every time. I read the other day about a 10-year-old that unalived himself because he was getting bullied. And but we also know the CDC said from since 2001, the suicide rate of kids 10 to 21 years old is increased by over 55%.
Oh,
Like
I know it's
I
sickening.
I it just sickens me to hear this. Like when we were younger, I don't I 10 years old, I never would have even imagined that. So that book is, in a light, rhyming, heartfelt way. It's this don't let your kid be mulled, spice heated. No, are they bullying other kids? And to your point, knowing what's going on when they're outside the house. How are they inside the house, but how are they outside the house? I've spoken to a lot of parents and a lot of them admit they can be guilty of, no, it couldn't be my kid. I know it's hard to want to see if your kid is exhibiting bad behavior or bullying, but kudos to those that can identify it and see it and want, you have to intervene and rectify that situation to know how your kid is treating other kids. I mean, that chapter really it really breaks my heart every time I hear about a kid taking their own life.
Oh, I know. And this is when I started my podcast, my regular Ed Franklin No Limits podcast. Self-esteem was a part of that, right? So I have four pillars: getting over limitations, telling your story as a salesperson, and telling the right story because we all have a story that isn't good, and we all have a story that's good. Like I had a pretty shitty childhood, but I looked at it, I thought it was great, right? And I could tell it two ways, and then excuses. But I so this might be a father mother kind of thing, and my podcast is about my perspective, a dad's perspective. Moms have a different way of nurturing kids than fathers, and I would always go to my kids and say, I better not find out that you started this or that you, because I had a couple kids that were assholes that I know they were pushing the teacher's buttons or whatever. And I would address that with them in front of the teacher and make them apologize if it was necessary or whatever. But we definitely, so my kids grew up, they just missed that social media bubble in high school. They're grown up. So my youngest will be 30 next year. And but my grandkids are right in the middle of it. And this cyberbullying is rampant. I mean, it is really rampant.
Yeah, it's awful. It just what you hear, what's going on, and it's and somebody else I was talking to yesterday was saying the same thing too. It's like also people don't understand. I mean, I think about this when I'm sending work emails, like things come across differently over email, over text,
Sure.
the way you position something. And so half the time these kids are not understanding just even like a text or what they're saying on social media has really harmful effects. So it's so imperative that parents are seeing that and intervening and getting involved and explaining why it's not
Well, and
right.
if they're using AI, so when I was looking for work for the last 6 months. I can tell when someone writes a job description using AI, right?
Yeah.
Because it's not like a normal person would talk. And then all the job descriptions start looking exactly the same because they're pulling from the same feed. But communication is has been lost on our children, right? A lot of times. Now my kids are older, but my grandkids, I've really had to work with them on communicating with people, not having their face in their phone all the time. And both of them are awesome. They can talk to people, they look at them in the face, they do all those things. And but you're right. but this, God, this, I find this cyberbullying going on a lot in politics, right? We see this bullying going on in politics and the
Hmm.
corporate world. I mean, you've been around a while, that shit goes on. It used to be just men against women, no offense, but it used to be, right, this men that are trying to take advantage of women. Now it's crossing all kinds of lines. And that was almost a little bit controllable, except I know my mom had some of those issues in the 70s, but no one would listen to her, right?
Yeah.
I knew these guys were doing this to her, and she was getting paid a lot less for doing the same job and things like that. And but we kind of identified what the problem was. You just have some dumbass men, right? That didn't grow up to respect women. But now it's everything. It's all this different bullying going on. But we want to have fun on this podcast. So
Yes, yes. Let's lighten it up a notch.
I don't see if that's what happens when you have kids, though. You kind of go back, you're protecting them all the time, right?
Right.
And I'm not protecting them to a fault. I'm trying to make them understand that I'm here if they need, to be protected or whatever. And I'm gonna listen, I'm gonna believe them up until when they get to that. You know what the Peter principle is?
No, it's
The
that.
Peter principle is when you get promoted to your level of incompetence. So you take a really good salesperson, you say, you know what, you're so good, we're going to put you in management. But they're not a good manager. They're a super good salesperson, but they don't really have the management skills. And we sometimes we try to do that with our kids too. We try to put them in positions that they're not going to really succeed at that level. We want to reward them, but they're not going to succeed at that level. So, but back to the kids in public areas in the church, it really blows me away. Some of these kids are just out of control. And we never let our kids bring toys to church because they're loud and they're sitting on wooden pews and they're banging things around. But it's the same thing. Listen, and I don't, do you have siblings?
Yes, I have a sister, and that
Okay.
yeah. So she has my niece and nephew that I'm close with.
Oh, that's right. You told me that. So, at least you weren't an only child. Only children, because I had my grandson for a long time by himself. Very difficult to raise one child because it feels like you always have to be there doing something for him, you know?
Yeah, I'm sure. I'm sure. Even though you have a house full of kids, just there's something different about, having a someone you can call your sibling for sure.
Yeah. So when you just have one, it's really difficult. But now I kind of have two. I kind of have one and a half. It's a long story, but we won't get into that. So tell me some more about this book. How long did it take you to write this book?
So it took me, well, writing it was pretty quick. But I did write it about uh, 11, 12 years ago. Especially back then, the process of getting it published, publishers don't want you unless you have an agent. Agents don't want you unless you have a publisher. And back then, with the internet not as wildly used as it is now, everybody had a different process. You had to like print it out, have a different cover letter, and I have a full-time job, and it just got to be something. It was so laborious, and I just shelved it for a while. But this has been a project. Every time I share it with somebody, people are like, "It's hilarious, it's brilliant." And I am somebody who's pretty good about checking off everything on my life's bucket list. At least I try. Like
Yeah.
I love game shows. I went on a game show 2 years ago. Like
Which game show did you go on?
I went on $100,000 pyramid.
Oh, cool. How did you
It,
do?
it was so fun. I made it to the winner's circle.
Oh, wow. Good for you.
I won a little bit, but I didn't get the top one. I stumbled. I literally think about it every night now. Like I should have said this. I should have said this. I
Of
should have said
course.
that. Um, but so this book was one that I said, this is going to be the one thing that if I do nothing with it, it's going to plague me for the rest of my life or on my deathbed. And now there's something called hybrid publishing. So, because self-publishing sort of was very daunting to me.
Yeah.
But hybrid publishing, I have a publisher behind me. I've invested the money into it, but they guide the process, like getting the ISBN number and submitting it to Amazon for distribution, getting the distributor. And so, it's been quite the learning process, but now it's here. It's on Amazon. It's on Barnes and Noble. I'm going around to. I live in Southern California, going around to retailers, hoping that they bring it in. I've got a couple local stores carrying it. Um, but yeah, it's been amazing to bring it to fruition and in the theme of your podcast, no limits, making sure that there's nothing left behind and making sure I get it out there and now I'm working on the second iteration to it.
Okay.
This is
That was
I
my next question. Are you writing another one?
Yeah, I think it's going to be a whiskey lover's guide, so you'll like this. A whiskey lover's guide to like dog parenting or to dog breeds, something related to dogs and whiskey and bourbon.
Oh my God, get me on dogs too. We got plenty of those. But I had to put the dog down a couple months ago. It was
Oh, that's the
the most
worst.
horrible day of my life.
Yeah, it really is.
Yeah,
It's
I've had to
the
do it a
worst.
couple times, and it's hard to explain to the kid that bringing kids back in there. It's hard to explain to them that they don't live forever, right? Especially if they're younger. And but they handled it fine, or my granddaughter handled it fine. But it's tough because we still have a dog here that was they were good friends, right? So
Oh
I know
yeah.
sometimes I'm looking at her going, I know you're thinking about Titan, doing things like that. I had some. Oh, do you know who David Goggins is?
David Goggins, no.
So he's called the strongest man in the world. So he was this guy that went through SEAL training 2 or 3 times, maybe
Oh
two
wow.
SEALs, one times as a ranger. But he's this guy that just is. He runs like he'll run for like 12 hours at a time. He does all these crazy things. But I listen to motivational speakers um, when I'm working out. And yesterday he told this story about in his mind he was saying, he's a religious guy, so he believes in God. He says one day he doesn't want to get up and see God, and God has his name up on this list. This refers to what you just said. And it has all these boxes. And he's like, you know what, God, you got the wrong David Goggins because I didn't do all those things. He goes, I know you're supposed to do those things. And this is something you're supposed to do. You've got it in your mind. So keep working on that. There's a way around anything.
I love that. And you know what? You'll never regret the things, you don't try. Like you've got to try it all.
I know.
Within reason, obviously it has to
Well,
it
I don't
has
know.
to be legal.
Yeah, should be legal.
Should be
Um,
legal, but
I'm
you don't know until you try and you'll never regret trying something. You'll regret not trying it.
And I very much want to get on the speaking circuit. I used to do more speaking before COVID. And like that publishing issue, it's the same thing. You have all these companies say, well, you can't speak unless you go through us and you got to pay us a commission. And I'm like, no, that's not going to happen. Was watching a clip the other day where this guy got offered $25,000 to speak. And they said, well, you have to wear a suit. And he says, no, I don't wear suits. I've been doing this for a long time. This is me. I'm going to come out like undressed. And they said, you'd turn down $25,000 to not be yourself in your mind. He says, absolutely. And
And
so when you talk about the kids you've mentored or the kids you're around, this is something very important for them. I said this when we were having our conversation. They're watching you, right? And how you're progressing through life and how you're going after these goals and things like that. Even more so probably than their parents sometimes, because they're watching, Dee Dee do those things because you had these dreams you want to fulfill. And they're watching you, and that's really important for those kids to see you doing that, by the way.
absolutely. It
Oh,
shows them different opportunities in life, right? My sister, or we're very close, but we are two different people. I'm somebody
sure.
I studied abroad in college in Italy. I travel all the time. She doesn't travel as much as I do. My niece, she is finishing her senior year at University of Wisconsin, where I went, and her father went as well. And she studied abroad in Italy. So, it helps to, it's
Sure.
not one way is wrong or right, but seeing the different opportunities that are out there, and saying, oh, you know what, I do want to, I am interested in seeing the world, and I do want to travel. It helps to set examples and different, on the
Yeah.
different possibilities of life. I have a good friend that I used to work with, and she's crushing it at work. She's an executive at another wine and spirits company, and she travels a lot, and she's sort of the breadwinner in her household. And when her daughter was a little younger, of course, she was, it's hard for parents that have to work all day and leave their kids at home and travel.
Sure.
And we talked about this a lot. And I said, you're setting the best example for your daughter to show that as a woman, you can go out and have it all. You can do it all. And her daughter has just thrived and become this fabulous, independent, amazing woman. And my friend is there for her every chance she gets, but she also has such an inspiration to watch her mother do what she does.
And my last podcast, the one I did just before this one, was about trying to, have a career and manage kids. And I think people tend to go, look, I have this many bills and I just have to do this job for now. But the reality is they need to have their dreams too, the parents.
Yeah.
and which tells the kids, look, you can go for things. So I told you I have 7 daughters, and I'm all about women executives. I worked for some great women. I'd never had an issue working for a woman. My oldest daughter, who got me started on this podcast, who I showed you her picture, and she's like, "Oh my God, she could be my sister." I said, "I know, I told you." She's like an executive in the government in Wisconsin, excuse me, in New Orleans, and she has aspirations possibly in politics and things. And she's a rock star. She's
That's great.
5'11". She's this gorgeous blonde, and she's super smart and super motivated. And her daughter's killing it in high school, right? She's got big goals, and she's going to do great because she's watching her mom. So I used to travel to Wisconsin quite a bit. There's a factory there. I used to go to Schofield, which is right outside Wausau, and I used to go there quite a bit. And I loved Wisconsin, except when I had to go in like March, February or March, because I'm a big
Yeah.
sissy California guy, and it was
Yeah, the winters were I'm originally from the East Coast, so I was used to
right.
winters, but the worst of it was December, January, and we always had like a month off for the holidays for holiday break. So, but yeah, there was always I had a lot of friends from California when I was at school in Wisconsin, and then a lot of friends from Madison, Wisconsin themselves, and you'd see the California kids would bundle up, but they had to run out to snow because they'd never seen snow before.
It's
And then you see the Wisconsin guys in like shorts and a
shorts.
vest. I'm like, come on, come on.
I know. I was walking. I was talking to my wife on the phone. I was going to the store, just a liquor store or something, and I went to step in a puddle because just being a stupid man,
Mhm.
and almost broke my neck because it was ice. It wasn't. I thought it was water.
Ah,
We don't have ice here. I mean, I won't tell people where you live, but I know where you live in Southern California, and we just don't. That doesn't happen here. So yeah, it was a trip seeing the snow, but then I didn't want to stay in it. I was that bundled up guy, and you know
yeah. I'm
the
that way
Wisconsin
now.
did. Yeah.
I've been out in California for 23 years. My blood has thinned. When I go back to New York and it's like 40, yeah, I don't want to go outside.
People say that happens. So you had another book, and have you ever thought of doing because you obviously have a skill for it, and you're able to focus of writing a book about anything else.
Yeah, so I have some children's book concepts, like actual children's books. Obviously, you see, I love to rhyme. I love the Dr. Seuss Dr. Seuss comment. I love to rhyme, so I actually have some children's book concepts. That's like a series, teaching kids about other cultures and that
Super.
we're all the
I like that.
same, and just
Yeah,
teaching them that we may look different, but in a fun, approachable way. As you can see,
sure.
that's sort of my style is teaching people poignant lessons, but in a fun, approachable way. And then I also have a really fascinating, sort of dark, twisted comedy movie idea that I wrote as a short story. So now that I'm hoping that I've, started this process, hopefully it'll open me up to meeting some people that I can branch out with and get some of my other projects out there with. But yeah, I have a creative outlet. So I'd love to do more of my projects and excited about the next one. The whiskey one is really coming together with the dog breeds.
That's
So
cool.
hopefully that'll be next.
Well, that's awesome. Well, listen, I'm glad you're on the podcast. We covered, I think, as much as we can cover here. I'm going to promote your book as much as I can, and I think you're awesome. I think that the book. I'm telling my guests, our listeners, you got to get this book. You got to buy it for a friend or whatever, or buy it for yourself. It's fun. It's quick. Have some wine. I tell you, what would be a fun game is to read your book before the wine and then read it after about a bottle or two in.
I love that idea.
It'd be a little bit of a tongue twister sometimes because I was starting to go, wait a second. I was reading in the kids' class one day, and I was reading, oh man, who's that author? He's like an English author, and I could not get the verbiage down right, and I was kept screwing. I felt like an idiot the way I was reading this book because I just couldn't get it. This book would be funny after about 3 glasses of vodka.
I think that's a brilliant idea. Ed, I can't thank you enough for promoting my book, talking about it, having me on. As you said, we got to chat last week. It's always a fun conversation with you. You're so easy to talk to, and I appreciate it. And your podcast is fantastic. So
Well,
thank you.
awesome. The problem I have with talking is I can do it forever, right? So we had my granddaughter had uh, teacher conferences yesterday, and I couldn't go because I had an interview with somebody else. And my wife was laughing, and I said, I know you would have been there an hour longer because I would have started asking the teacher questions and given my opinion on everything. But all right, we'll stay on here for a second. I'm going to do a little outro and then we'll wrap it up. So this is Ed Franklin with the No Limits podcast. This is Raising 10, our first episode. Danielle Frank, you've got to get this book that she wrote, and I'll put a picture of it up during when I play when I get everything put together. You can always contact me at edfranklin.nolimits@gmail.com, and I'm all over social media. My viewers are way up. Keep doing what you're doing. Subscribe to my YouTube channel, and we will see you all next week. Talk to you later.